No one expected Darius Cole to walk out of that courtroom alive. At just 20 years old, he was already being called the monster from Mason Street by every news station in the city. The crime? A brutal assault on a wealthy businessman named Richard Hale. The man was in the hospital, fighting for his life, and the police claimed Darius had put him there. The victim's family sat in the front row every day, their eyes fixed on Darius with a hatred so sharp it could cut through glass. The prosecution's case looked airtight. Security footage showed a figure in Darius's hoodie, holding a backpack identical to his, entering the building moments before the attack. His fingerprints were on the doorknob. His phone was found just meters from the scene. The police had arrested him within hours. To the public, it was an open and shut case. But Darius wasn't a monster. The truth? On the night of the crime, he had been in the basement of his Aunt Clara's house, kneeling on a cold cement floor, trying to fix her busted water heater. Aunt Clara, a quiet, nervous woman, had been too scared to testify, afraid of the local gang that ran the neighborhood, the same gang that Darius suspected had committed the crime. But suspicion wasn't proof, and proof was what he didn't have. His court-appointed lawyer, a man named Gregory Holt, seemed more interested in plea deals than fighting for him. "We can get you 15 years instead of 30, Gregory whispered during breaks. But Darius refused to plead guilty to something he didn't do. By the third day of trial, he felt the walls closing in. The prosecutor, a sharp-tongued woman named Lydia Crane, was methodically dismantling every shred of his defense. Then came the grainy security footage again. She played it with a smirk, confident it sealed his fate. That's when something inside Darius snapped. He stood up so suddenly that the guard beside him reached for his taser. "Pause it," Darius said, his voice cutting through the quiet. The judge raised an eyebrow but nodded to the clerk, who froze the video. "Right there," Darius said, stepping toward the monitor. The figure on the screen wore the same kind of jacket he owned, but the left sleeve had a thick white stripe running down it. Darius rolled up his own sleeve, revealing plain black fabric. "This jacket isn't mine. Look closer." The jury leaned forward. Lydia frowned but said nothing. Then came the fingerprints. "You want to know why my prints were on the doorknob?" Darius said, turning toward the jury. "Because I lived in that building 2 years ago. My prints never left." "The police didn't tell you that, did they?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Finally, the phone. "They found my phone near the scene because it was stolen the week before. I filed a report. It's in the system." He nodded to the bailiff, who brought forward a thin folder. Inside was the police report, filed by Darius himself, buried in a database no one had bothered to check. The prosecution's confident mask began to crack. But Darius wasn't finished. He turned to the jury. "You've been told I'm a violent criminal. That's the story everyone wants to believe because it's easy. But here's the truth, you're looking at someone the real criminals want gone. They planted my phone, wore a jacket that looks like mine, and made sure the cops found me first. Why? Because I told them I wouldn't work for them. I wouldn't be part of their crew." The judge ordered the jury to disregard speculation, but the seed was planted. Darius could see it in their eyes. That afternoon, Lydia Crane brought in a surprise witness, a man named Trevor Briggs, who claimed he saw Darius running from the building. But under cross-examination, Trevor slipped. He mentioned the jacket again, describing the same white stripe. When asked how he could see it at night from across the street, his answer faltered. The jury noticed. Piece by piece, the story the prosecution had built over months began to crumble. When closing arguments ended the next day, the jury didn't take a day to decide. They didn't even take 3 hours. 40 minutes later, they returned not guilty. Darius didn't cry when the cuffs came off. He didn't smile. He just looked at Lydia, then at the cameras lining the back of the courtroom, and spoke in a voice that carried through every microphone in the room. "If I didn't speak up, you'd be telling my story in past tense." The clip went viral. News outlets replayed it for days. Social media flooded with the hashtag past tense, used by people sharing their own stories of being falsely accused. For weeks afterward, Darius's name wasn't followed by monster anymore. It was followed by miracle. But Darius knew the real miracle wasn't the verdict. It was the fact that he'd survived a system designed to silence him. And deep down, he knew this wasn't over. Because somewhere out there, the real attacker was still walking free, and Darius planned to find him.